Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Marco Del Prince from VEEP. I want to thank everyone for joining the fifth installment of the YMCA VEEP webinar training series. Myself and Joel Green are going to conduct this fifth training webinar. I'm really excited to bring you some more really interesting key concepts and techniques that you're going to be learning in the VEEP system that we really want to highlight today to kind of reiterate so you come out of this much more knowledgeable about some of the things that are really life-changing skills in the VEEP system. As always, everyone's mics will be muted just for the sake of no background noise, but if you have any questions along the way, submit them in the chat box and we'll be sure to address them at the end of the call. And also, I think a good practice that we first started last week, and the only thing that I would ask anyone on this call would very simply be at the end of the webinar to just submit a vote from a 0 to a 10 on how you thought this webinar went from an interesting scale. So if you were not impressed and you need to see something more and better, anything from a 0 to a 4 would probably suffice. And on the opposite end, if you're impressed and we're blowing you away and we're doing our job, 9s and 10s are appreciated. So it's very important on our end that we can do everything within our power to impress you guys and to show you how powerful the system is. So feedback is very important. So without further ado, we're very excited to jump into this training webinar. A couple of the topics we're going to cover specifically are about amounts in the program. Using the actual visual plate itself is a key concept in the program, but understanding amounts and how to utilize the free foods is something that all of you need to be very aware of because it's a staple in using the program. We're also going to cover a couple really cool compensation skills that you're going to learn in VEEP. When I say compensation skills, I mean things that you're going to learn how to do when you or your client gets off track. Now, we always hear the term getting off track in terms of health and nutrition. What it very simply means is just screwing up, being a completely normal person that eats unhealthy foods from time to time. But the cool thing about the things in VEEP is that we actually teach you specific things that you can do before, during, and after these times where you're going to splurge and really eat some unhealthy foods to really help mitigate the effects. So these are absolutely pivotal skills in the system, and we're going to highlight some of those today. And after that, I'm going to hand it off to Joel Green, CEO and founder of VEEP. He's going to talk to you folks a little bit more about using functional foods or using foods functionally in the program, which is also another staple in VEEP. So without further ado, I'm going to get started here. And once again, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to join this webinar. So folks, when it comes to amounts in the VEEP system, all of you are familiar now with the fact that the plate itself revolves around your standard 10.5-inch dinner plate. And some common questions we do come across because VEEP is so unique is that it doesn't revolve around, counting or tracking. So you're not dealing with points, you're not dealing with grams or calories, you're not even measuring your foods out. What you're very simply doing is you're taking a natural behavior of visually estimating your foods, which we all do every day when we eat, and we perfect it using the system by literally just showing you what to eat visually for every meal of the day. So as you folks can tell by now, there's so many different types of meals in the program. Some are large, some are small. But what's very important to emphasize here is the use of what we call the free foods. So in some of the meals that you see in VEEP, when you first load it onto your plate, particularly for some of the lunches and dinners, you're going to see like a large volume of food on your plate. And you're like, wow, like that's a pretty substantial size meal. But at any point in time, folks, that you see a plus button below the plate, it means that it's actually going to break the meal down into the actual calorie-bearing amounts of the foods for this meal. So as you could see for this particular salad, when I click the plus button, it's going to show me what the actual foods consist of on this meal. But the thing about this meal and many others in the VEEP system is that you have to understand that oftentimes we utilize the free foods in these meals. And the free foods are very simply foods that you can add to any meal in the system liberally. So at any point in time you want to add volume to your meal, you click on the free foods button, and these foods are free to add to your meal to really just increase the volume, create a little bit of a tastier meal. And it just really helps with satiety for being full with a VEEP meal. So if some of your clients come back and say, oh, some of the meals look very small, just keep in mind that a pivotal part of using VEEP is to incorporate the free foods. So a couple examples on using this would be, just for this example, this is chicken, avocado, and cucumber. And for this particular example, you could use the free foods to create a massive salad, with maybe a fat-free balsamic vinaigrette, and it will just be absolutely fantastic for your health by utilizing all those, rich fibrous free foods in addition to what you see on the actual plate. So when it comes to, getting your exact foods correct, just press the button below the plate and it'll show you the exact amounts. And then when it comes to adding anything on top, just have at it. And the more the merrier. Another quick example of using the free foods would be for breakfast. Sometimes you'll see in VEEP that, you'll see, for example, an omelet for breakfast. And if you click on the button below the plate when you load the omelet, it's going to show you like the exact amounts of this particular omelet that I'm allowed to have. So this egg white omelet allows me to have 2 egg whites, and I have to pick a fat source, so it recommends avocado for my omelet. However, if you notice when I first loaded the omelet onto my plate, it looks much richer, much fuller, much larger. And that's simply because they utilize the free foods. They added salsa on top of it, some hot sauce, looks like some mushrooms and tomatoes in there. So by all means, utilize the free foods, and it'll absolutely take away from any preconceived notion that some of the meals look small in nature. So that's one thing that I did want to cover that I feel is very important. Now, I want to shift gears here a little bit, and I want to cover some compensation skills that you're going to learn all about in VEEP. And I can't tell you enough about how important these lessons are, folks, because at the end of the day, I think what common preconceived notions about, doing wellness or nutrition or weight loss programs is that, most people just think that when they do these programs that they can't screw up. They're going to be eating foods that are very strict. They're not going to be happy with their life because they just got to get through it and lose the weight. But in reality, that's just not how people operate over the course of a year. People are going to screw up. Everybody screws up. I screw up on probably a daily basis, and I'm speaking in terms of this program and educating you folks. But that's just the truth. Real life is tailored towards getting people off track. From just the availability of unhealthy foods to just how we live our lives always on the go. So what's really important to understand here is that VEEP is designed around screwing up, meaning that you're going to learn skills in the program that you're going to be able to apply in specific situations where you're not going to be eating very healthy. And I want to cover one that's in particular very, very important, and it's called eating in threes. And the basic high-level overview of eating in threes is to stop thinking of your food and your meals as just a single meal, and start thinking about it in terms of what you eat for a particular meal is influenced by what you ate before that meal and what you're going to eat after that meal. Okay? So think about that for a second. No longer look at as an individual meal as, whether it's healthy or it's not. Start thinking about it in terms of how your body processes that meal that you're eating currently is greatly influenced by what you ate prior to that meal and what you're about to eat after. So what I'm going to do here, folks, is I'm going to play a little bit of a snippet of this video lesson in VEEP University called Eating in Threes, and it's going to highlight exactly what I'm talking about. And after the lesson's over, I'm going to jump back into here and close up with a few other tactics you folks are really going to love. So without further ado, here's a brief lesson on eating in threes.
Welcome back to VEEP University. In this lesson, you're going to learn a pattern of eating that's going to help you to stay lean for life. The core idea behind this pattern is one of the foundational ideas in VEEP, and it's the idea that all of your meals are connected. This idea is very simple. It's simply that whenever you're eating, you're never actually eating a single meal. Instead, the way to think of it is that you're always eating your meals in groups of 3. So what you're going to eat right now is not determined by some fixed set of rules, but instead it's determined by what you ate last and what you're going to eat next. This simple idea will form the core of how you eat for the rest of your life. And it's based on how your body actually works. Now, if you think about it, several times a day on any given day, your body goes in and out of storing fat and burning fat. This is completely natural for your body. For example, you might have had a big lunch where you had maybe a hamburger and some fries. And after that, your body's going to store some fat. But later on at night when you're sleeping, your body is going to burn fat. We simply take this same principle and we teach you how to use it to your advantage. If you gain weight at one meal, you can make adjustments to your next meal to take it off. If you know you're going to go out and have a big meal, you can make adjustments at your current meal to get you into accelerated fat burning so you can have that next meal guilt-free. Once you learn to eat your meals in groups of 3, you gain tremendous freedom. You can get off track and simply adapt at your next meal. For example, if I know that I'm going to go out in a couple of hours and I'm going to have a hamburger and I'm going to have some fries, at my current meal, I can get into accelerated fat burning. Then at my next meal, because I've been in accelerated fat burning for a few hours prior to that meal, I can have that hamburger and fries guilt-free. At my next subsequent meal, because that meal is determined what I ate prior, I'm going to make some adjustments and get into accelerated fat loss again and offset any weight gain from that meal. That's the idea of eating in groups of 3s. What you eat now is determined by what you ate last and what you're going to eat next. That's it for this VEEP University lesson.
All right, folks, thanks for taking some time to listen to that lesson. I hope it was impressive, but certainly highlighted the skill set of learning how to eat your foods in groups of 3. So when you know you're going to splurge, when you know you have a dinner coming up that evening where you're just going to say, you know what, the hell with it, I'm going to eat the foods I enjoy eating, even if it's unhealthy. There's specific things that you can do before that meal and after that meal to help offset the weight gain that would occur. And that's all about eating in 3. So it's an incredibly powerful skill set. So I just want to give you folks a little taste of that lesson. Now, another very important compensation skill learned in VEEP is what's called the Tuesday-Thursday fat burn. And this coincides with what Joel was mentioning in the video about working with the body's natural 24-hour cycle. But what you'll notice in VEEP is that on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, we actually take advantage of the body's natural 24-hour cycle by giving you specific food combinations that extend the fat burning process after you wake up in the morning. So I think you folks remember from the previous lesson about how we told you that, you know, when you wake up in the morning, your body is actually burning fat from fasting the night before. But the second you digest a carbohydrate, I don't care if it's a piece of toast or a little bit of oatmeal or some fruit, your body's going to secrete some insulin and you're going to shut fat burning off. However, if you're able to eat specific combinations of protein and fat for your first subsequent meals, you're going to extend the fat burning process by releasing a hormone called glucagon that's going to slowly raise your blood sugar and you're going to keep burning fat. Now, we do this very strategically in the program on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. So what you're going to notice when you're using VEEP or your clients are using VEEP is that the Tuesday and Thursday morning fat burn pattern give your body an extra 4 hours each day of extended fat burning. So that's 8 hours extra each week. So extrapolate that out, folks. An extra 8 hours of fat burning each week can really help offset, you know, weight gain that would occur on the weekend. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. And what you'll notice is that when you click on Tuesday or Thursday morning, you'll notice that the first 2 meals of the day are going to be a combination of protein and fat. So either egg whites, avocado. You'll see for our AM snack, there are just a handful of almonds. You might see a Quest bar in there or a whey protein shake. So they tend to be meals that are smaller in volume. However, there's specific purpose behind it because it's extending fat burning coming into, let's say, your lunch, which is much larger. So that only occurs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you'll notice on other days of the week, like Wednesdays and Fridays, breakfasts will be much larger. So keep in mind when you're talking to your clients and they're talking about, oh, you know, my meal this morning was really small. It was just an omelet or a handful of peanuts. Just keep in mind that there is a lesson in VEEP called the Tuesday-Thursday fat burn, just like I showed you with the eating in 3s. And it talks all about how this specific pattern on Tuesdays and Thursdays takes full advantage by extending fat burning an extra 4 hours. Now, folks, this is incredibly powerful stuff. But what we're doing is we're essentially teaching you how to eat the right combinations of foods for specific effects. So the ability to work with the body's natural 24-hour cycle of burning fat and storing fat, we're allowing you to essentially be on the offensive and to use it to your advantage. So you can burn fat when you want, and when you know you're going to store fat, you can offset it by using these techniques. So this isn't dieting, folks. This is using food to control your weight, and it's a game-changing approach. So hopefully that was helpful. Without further ado, I'd love to jump into the next topic with Joel Green, where he's going to talk about actually using foods functionally and some of the fiber-intensive dinners that we have in VEEP, which kind of actually coincides with maximizing fat burning. So Joel's going to jump into this, and I'm going to hand the controller off to him. So without further ado, Joel, let me pass this over to you in just a second, and we will get started for the remainder of the webinar.
Okay, you should be able to hear me now, everybody. All right, thanks, Marco. Thanks so much for that. So we're going to continue on here. And one of the fundamental skills that we imbue in people that use the system is just understanding how much. It's like a fundamental skill. How much of any given thing can you eat at any given time? And so I want to focus on starches here for a little bit because in terms of amounts, what we covered was foods that are free. Those tend to be like your cruciferous vegetables, leafy things like that, and those are kind of free foods in the system. So we cover amounts with that. But a very important area is understanding carbohydrates and understanding amounts and creating a skill set so where your clients are not having to track that all the time, but they just really learn it. So a really important differentiator that I wanted to point out that you can help your clients with is carbs that are cellular carbs that have a cell wall or cellular in nature, versus processed carbs that do not have an intact cell wall, the carbs that do not have cells in them. And that's really the way to look at it. So what we're looking at here are 85 calories of 4 different types of starches. And so with black beans, they have the intact cell wall, and look what happens. The amounts are significantly more than the other types of starches we're seeing here. So we see rice, and we see that we've actually shucked off the husks, so the cell wall's gone, and what you have is the starch kind of in the middle with the rice. And so it's still a natural food, so it's a little bit more energy dense. And then we get to sort of a processed food where we've taken it and extruded it and made it into goo and then molded it and done all kinds of stuff. So pasta, and you notice like that's about half of what you had with the rice. And then we take that to another step with a packaged processed food like a Cliff Bar, and you notice that the same calories are about half. And so what you see is this thing of as we get rid of the cell wall and begin processing food, you lose about your energy density of the food essentially doubles. And that's an easy way to think of it. So whenever you're dealing with carbohydrates that have a cell wall, so you can think of lots of different types of foods. You can think of beans. You can think of any types of vegetables, fruits, things like that. You generally can have about twice as much of that as you could when you're dealing with some sort of carbohydrate where it's essentially been machined and processed, and we've taken out the cell wall and we've stripped out the fiber. So your rule of thumb is that you basically double the energy density. In other words, the volume gets cut in half and the calories stay the same. So how much you can have, you literally just start cutting it in half by eliminating the cell wall. And that's kind of a skill set, just a sort of an easy rule of thumb that that you can acquire just by a little bit of thought, and it eliminates a lot of the tracking and counting. And we can see that played out here. So we all think of corn as fattening and high glycemic and all that, but the truth is actually the opposite. Now, I have actually been in the room when we do the measurements for this stuff, and I've made them double and triple check because I couldn't believe it when I saw it myself. But and let's, for the sake of argument, just say that we're talking about organic corn, and we want to, obviously avoid GMO corn. But this is organic corn, and this is 170 calories worth, and it's a massive amount. So corn is actually a very, very in terms of energy density, it's actually a very friendly food. A lot of it is very few calories. It's one of the least energy dense foods out there, and it's got fiber and all kinds of things in it. So the old perception was, well, corn's high glycemic, blah, 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 blah. But in terms of energy density, the same amount of calories in terms of a processed food, like a Cliff Bar, you can see that it's more than half. It's about a quarter. And so going back to that rule of thumb here, as we strip out the intact cell wall, and you can see that holds true here as well. Here we see a Cliff Bar compared to some black beans at 85 calories. It's about a quarter. And so these are just some sort of easy, intuitive things that as we gain the skill set of understanding the question, how much, one of the basics is to understand when it comes to starches whether or not we're dealing with an intact cell wall, where starch is married to a cellular matrix, or we've stripped it out. And then the rule of thumb there is half to a quarter is going to get you, in terms of size, it's about half to a quarter of what you would see where the cell wall was intact, comparing it to corn to a Cliff Bar, for example. All right, so sorry, a little wordy there, but I hope that makes sense. Okay, so moving on. So looking at starches, I want to just spend a little bit more time on this because when we get into starches, there are very functional types of starches. They're extremely functional. So what I do is I'm going to walk through 3 of those and then show you how we use them in a meal. So first we have pulse starches, and there's all kinds of scientific literature about pulses. But pulses are essentially your legumes, your garbanzos, black beans, pinto beans, things like that. So pulses have very unique properties. One of the most notable effects of pulses is that they actually have what's called the second meal effect. And what that is that they actually lower the glycemic impact of the next meal that you eat. So pulse meals consisting of pulse starches, garbanzos, black beans, pinto beans, legumes, things like that, the thing to keep in mind is they change the glucose area under the curve for the next meal. So they're very functional in that respect. We can use them as tools. These are our most potent butyrate producers. So they produce short-chain fatty acids. They get the bacteria in the gut to produce that, which seal the gut, which is a very important thing. They're loaded in amylose, so they digest very slowly, and they promote bifidobacteria, which is extremely beneficial to the host. Next, there's a compound called isothiocyanates, big word. But really, the thing you need to know about isothiocyanates, 2 key things. They burn brown fat. They stimulate the production of brown fat, which is different from white fat. Brown fat has mitochondria in it, and it is extremely beneficial for fat burning and for maintaining weight. So we can get the body to make more brown fat, and one of the ways is with isothiocyanate foods. So they're present in cabbages, in mustards, in wasabi. All those foods are rich in these things. They also promote bifidobacteria. Then there's foods that have inulin, and inulin also does the same thing and promotes bifidobacteria. So I want to show you all those foods that I just mentioned, all those functional foods, and how we actually pull them all together into a single meal. And so from there, we derive functional nutrition. So here is an extremely potent fat-burning meal I showed you guys once before, but I wanted to dive into why everything is there. So in this particular meal, we're using all of these tools. So this has pulse starches. It has garbanzos. Let me get this where you can see both on the screen. Okay. So this has garbanzo beans, so it's got pulse starches. It has, there's mustard in the recipe. There's actually a mustard sauce here that we use for this. So we're using isothiocyanates in this to stimulate brown fat production. And it's got asparagus, which is loaded in inulin. So we're actually combining all of these functional foods together for a highly functional meal that is quite powerful. And so this is functional nutrition at its finest, taking foods that are functional in nature, timing them correctly, and using them for specific effect to affect subsequent meals. All these things come together in VEEP, and it's made so simple because it's just pictures. So that is it for this session, but what covered was really diving into starches and the amounts and compensation. And again, these are skills, so just really gaining the idea that there are sort of key differentiators in starches, if they have a cell wall, if they don't. There are key functional starches. Once we get our handle around starches and carbohydrates, we've gone a long way towards helping our clients lick the problem. And it's based on this sort of skill set acquisition here. That's it for this one. We'll go ahead and take some questions now if anybody has any.
Yeah, we'll give it about 30 seconds. Thank you very much, Joel. While we give anyone a chance to submit a question, if you'll please submit your response in terms of what you thought of this webinar from a 0 to a 10. That would be greatly appreciated. And along the way, if anyone submits a question, we'll field that. So please, by all means, submit. All right, we've got, let's see here, I'll read through the list. I'm not holding anyone out because everyone's opinion is certainly valuable. We've got a 9, we've got a 9, we've got a 4, we've got a 9, an 8, and a 9. So far, not too bad. Another 9. That's okay. Whoever's got that 4, we got to turn you around. We got to up our game. So maybe we can communicate with you after the call and maybe cover some things you want to see a little bit more.
I didn't see a 4, Marco.
I did.
Oh, you did.
That's okay. We'll get Danette up there. She's a tough one, but that's okay. We encourage it. Okay. All right. Yeah, 9s, mostly 9s and 8s. So mostly 9s actually. So seems like universally it was pretty well received. So once again, everybody, thank you so much for attending this webinar. I know this has been pretty thorough in nature. We have one more on the 8th this week, all of which are recorded and will be put on the platform. And we are nearing a launch date, which we're super excited about. We're going to make this a big success for everybody. So everyone have a great rest of the day, and we will talk to you in a couple days. Thank you very much.